Elon sat down, adjusting his suit as the camera zoomed in. The host, with a smirk on his face, began the interview in a way that caught everyone off guard. "So, Elon," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "why should anyone care about your little space projects? Isn't it just a rich guy's hobby, playing with rockets?" The audience let out a nervous laugh, unsure whether to follow the host's lead or support Elon. For a moment, there was silence. Elon, known for his calm demeanor, took a deep breath. He glanced at the host, then at the audience, who were waiting for his response. It was clear that the host wasn't interested in a respectful conversation. He wanted to provoke Elon, to push him into a corner. But Elon wasn't easily rattled. He had faced challenges far bigger than a rude talk show host. Still, the tension in the room grew with each passing second, and everyone could sense that this interview was about to take an unexpected turn. Elon leaned forward slightly, his eyes fixed on the host. "Space exploration isn't about hobbies," he said, his voice steady. "It's about the future of humanity." The host rolled his eyes dramatically, as if dismissing Elon's words. The audience shifted in their seats, unsure what to expect next. They had come to see a fun, light-hearted interview, but what they were witnessing was far from that. "Come on, Elon," the host interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "You really expect people to believe that? You're just doing it for the fame, aren't you?" Elon's expression remained calm, but there was a hint of something deeper, determination, perhaps, or maybe frustration. The host wasn't just challenging his ideas. He was undermining the very work Elon had dedicated his life to. The audience could feel the tension rising, as if the room itself was holding its breath. And then, without raising his voice, Elon said something that would leave everyone in the room speechless. Instead of reacting with anger or frustration, Elon paused. He let the host's words hang in the air for a moment, giving the audience time to absorb the insult. Then, in a calm and measured tone, he began to speak, not to the host, but to the audience. "Imagine a world," Elon started, "where the next generation looks back at us and asks, 'Why didn't you try? Why didn't you push the boundaries of what's possible? Why didn't you do more to protect humanity's future?'" His words cut through the tension like a knife. The audience, who had been expecting a quick comeback or a sarcastic retort, were suddenly pulled into Elon's vision. They could feel the passion behind his words, the weight of the responsibility he carried. Elon continued, "This isn't about fame or money. It's about survival. If we don't expand beyond Earth, we're putting all humanity at risk. One disaster, natural or man-made, and it could be over. Space exploration is our chance to ensure that we have a future, that our children and their children have a place to thrive." The host, sensing that he was losing control of the conversation, tried to interrupt again. "Okay, but Elon didn't stop. He was on a roll now, speaking directly to the people in the room, to those watching at home, to anyone who cared about the future. "I get it," he said. "It sounds crazy to talk about colonizing other planets. It sounds like science fiction. But everything we have today, every piece of technology, every medical breakthrough, every advancement, was once considered impossible." The audience was completely silent now. Even the host, who had been so eager to mock and belittle Elon, was listening intently. There was something about the way Elon spoke that made people sit up and pay attention. "We have a choice," Elon said, his voice soft but powerful. "We can sit back and laugh at the dreamers, or we can be the ones who dare to dream. We can build a future that's brighter than anything we can imagine, or we can let fear and doubt hold us back." The room was still, as if everyone was waiting for something, some final word, some grand statement to tie it all together. And then Elon, in his quiet, unassuming way, delivered a line that no one will forget. "I'm not doing this for me," he said. "I'm doing it for all of us." The audience erupted into applause, but the host sat there, speechless. As the applause died down, the host shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His attempt to mock Elon had backfired spectacularly. Instead of making Elon look foolish, he had inadvertently given him a platform to inspire and captivate the audience. The host, not one to admit defeat easily, tried to regain control of the conversation. "Well, that's all very philosophical, Elon," he said, a forced smile on his face. But let's be real. Most people are just trying to get by day to day. They don't care about Mars or rockets. They care about putting food on the table. It was a valid point, but the way the host delivered it felt condescending. He was still trying to downplay Elon's message, as if the future of humanity was something that could be brushed aside. Elon, however, didn't take the bait. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully. "You're right," he said, surprising everyone in the room. "People are struggling. There are real problems here on Earth that need to be solved." The host smirked, thinking he had finally won the argument. But Elon wasn't finished. "But here's the thing," Elon continued, his voice calm and steady. "The challenges we face on Earth, whether it's poverty, inequality, or climate change, those are the same challenges we'll face in space. The technology we developed to survive on Mars could help us solve problems here on Earth. It's not one or the other. It's both." The audience was hooked once again, leaning forward in their seats as Elon spoke. They could sense that this conversation was about more than just space exploration. It was about the future of humanity, about the choices we make today that will shape the world of tomorrow. As Elon continued to speak, the host's smirk slowly faded. He realized that this was no ordinary guest, and this was no ordinary interview. The audience was captivated, and it was clear that Elon had won over most of the people in the room. The host, however, wasn't ready to let go of his original plan. His goal had been to undermine Elon, to make him look like just another wealthy entrepreneur out of touch with reality. But now, he found himself on the defensive. "Okay, Elon," the host said, trying to regain his footing. "But all this talk about space and technology, don't you think it's a little, I don't know, disconnected? People need solutions now, not in some distant future on Mars." Elon leaned back in his chair, giving the question some thought before responding. His calm demeanor hadn't changed, but there was a new energy in the room. He knew that this was a crucial moment. The host was trying to paint him as someone who only cared about grand, futuristic ideas. But Elon wasn't about to let that narrative stick. "You're right," Elon said, surprising the host once again. "We do need solutions now, and that's exactly what we're working on. Space exploration might seem far off, but the technologies we're developing to make life possible on other planets, those innovations will have real, immediate benefits for people here on Earth." The audience was still hanging on to every word. Elon continued, "Think about it. Solar power, electric vehicles, sustainable energy storage. These are the technologies that will help us survive on Mars. But they're also the same technologies that can solve our energy crisis right here, right now." The host was visibly uncomfortable. This wasn't how he had expected the conversation to go. Elon wasn't just talking about rockets and space colonies anymore. He was addressing real-world problems, problems that affected everyone in the audience. Elon leaned forward slightly, his tone becoming more personal. "The truth is, we can't afford to think small. If we only focus on the problems in front of us, we'll never be ready for the challenges of the future. We have to think big, because the future is coming whether we're ready or not." The host's face tightened. He was running out of ways to challenge Elon, but he wasn't ready to give up. "But Elon," he said, his voice tinged with frustration, "not everyone can afford to think big. Most people are just trying to survive." For a moment, there was silence. The audience waited, unsure of what Elon would say next. Would he dismiss the host's point? Would he brush aside the reality of people's struggles? But Elon didn't do any of that. Instead, he nodded slowly, acknowledging the host's words. "I understand that," he said, his voice soft but firm. "And that's why we need to do both. We need to solve the problems of today, while also preparing for the challenges of tomorrow." The audience erupted into applause once again. The host, who had been so confident at the start of the interview, was now struggling to keep up. He had underestimated Elon, and now he was paying the price. As the interview continued, it became clear that the audience had shifted. At first, they had been hesitant, unsure whether to side with the charismatic talk show host or the visionary entrepreneur. But now, it was obvious that Elon had won them over. The host, sensing that he was losing control of the conversation, tried to steer the discussion back to more familiar territory. "Okay, Elon," he said, forcing a smile. "Let's talk about something a little less." Grand. How about Twitter? You've been making headlines lately with your moves over there. Elon smiled, clearly aware that the host was trying to change the subject. Sure, he said, playing along for the moment. What do you want to know? The host leaned forward, eager to regain some control of the interview. Well, some people have said that your actions at Twitter have been controversial. What do you say to the critics who think you made things worse instead of better? Elon smiled and fade. He had expected this question, and he was more than ready to answer it. Change is always controversial, he said simply. But if we don't change, we stagnate. And stagnation is worse than any controversy. The audience responded with a few scattered claps, but the host wasn't satisfied. He pressed further. But what about the people who say you've been too aggressive, that you fired too many employees, that you've damaged the platform? Elon's expression remained calm, but there was a steely determination in his eyes. Sometimes tough decisions have to be made, he said. If we want to build something better, we have to be willing to let go of what's not working. It's never easy, but it's necessary. The host leaned back, crossing his arms. That's easy for someone like you to say, he muttered, his tone dripping with sarcasm. You've got billions of dollars to fall back on. What about the people who've lost their jobs? Elon's expression softened. He knew this was a sensitive topic, and he didn't want to come across as heartless. I understand the impact of those decisions, he said, but I also believe that the changes we're making will create more opportunities in the long run. Sometimes you have to take a step back in order to move forward. The audience seemed to appreciate Elon's honesty, and once again, they broke into applause. The host, however, wasn't done yet. The host's frustration was becoming more and more evident. He had hoped to corner Elon, to make him look out of touch with the struggles of ordinary people. But instead, Elon had turned the tables, speaking directly to the audience and winning them over with his vision and sincerity. You know, Elon, the host said, his voice growing sharper, some people think you're more concerned with building your legacy than actually helping people. Elon didn't flinch. He had heard this criticism before, and he was more than prepared to address it. I'm not interested in my legacy, he said, his tone firm. I'm interested in solving problems. If that means taking risks, if that means making decisions that aren't popular in the short term, then so be it. The host's eyes narrowed. He had hoped to rattle Elon, but it wasn't working. But don't you think there's a point where ambition becomes arrogance? Where the desire to change the world starts to look like a desire for control? Elon paused for a moment, considering the question. Ambition can be dangerous if it's driven by ego, he admitted. But my goal isn't control. It's progress. I want to see humanity thrive, to see us reach new heights. And that's only possible if we're willing to push boundaries and take risks. The audience was silent, waiting for the host's response. But for the first time since the interview had started, the host seemed unsure of what to say. Elon's words had struck a chord, not just with the audience, but with everyone watching at home. Finally, the host leaned forward, his tone softening slightly. Do you ever doubt yourself, Elon? Do you ever wonder if maybe you're taking on too much? Elon smiled, a hint of vulnerability showing for the first time. Of course I have doubts, he said. Anyone who's trying to do something big has doubts. But the only way to overcome those doubts is to keep moving forward. The audience erupted into applause once again. The host, who had started the interview with the intention of embarrassing Elon, now found himself outmatched. The host, visibly shaken by Elon Musk's confident and thoughtful responses, knew that this interview had taken a direction he hadn't anticipated. What started as an opportunity to put Elon on the defensive had turned into a powerful moment of reflection for everyone in the room. The tension had built steadily throughout the conversation, but now it was reaching its peak. The host's attempt to provoke Elon had backfired, leaving the audience captivated by the tech visionary's words. With a slightly nervous laugh, the host decided to make one final attempt to regain control of the interview. He glanced at his notes and then back at Elon, trying to come up with a closing question that would leave a lasting impression, something that would reclaim his authority. So, Elon, the host began, leaning forward with a forced grin. Let's say you accomplish everything you set out to do. You get us to Mars, solve the energy crisis, revolutionize transportation. What's next for Elon Musk? What's the end game? The audience fell silent, their eyes locked on Elon, waiting for his response. Even those who had come into the interview with doubts about him were now fully engaged, eager to hear what he would say. It was the perfect setup for a grand, self-aggrandizing answer, the kind that might finally give the host a soundbite he was looking for. But Elon, true to form, didn't take the bait. He paused for a long moment, his gaze drifting thoughtfully as he considered the question. The room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Then, in a calm and measured tone, Elon spoke. "The end game isn't about me," he said simply. "It never has been. This isn't about leaving a legacy or proving something to the world. It's about creating a future where humanity can survive and thrive, no matter what challenges we face. That's the goal, to make life better for as many people as possible, for generations to come." The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. It wasn't rehearsed or polished. It was genuine. The audience, moved by his words, began to murmur in approval. Even the host, who had spent the entire interview trying to poke holes in Elon's character, couldn't help but feel the impact of what he had just heard. But Elon wasn't finished. He leaned forward slightly, his voice softening as he addressed the audience directly. "We're all in this together," he continued. "Every one of us has the power to make a difference, to contribute to something bigger than ourselves. It doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or a student or a factory worker. What matters is that we don't stop trying to improve, that we don't give up on the idea that the future can be better than the present." The room was still, the air thick with emotion. Elon's words hung in the air like a challenge, a call to action that resonated deeply with everyone listening. For the first time, the host seemed at a loss for words. He had spent the entire interview trying to diminish Elon's achievements, but now, in this moment, he found himself unable to do anything but listen. The audience erupted into applause, loud, thunderous applause that seemed to shake the entire studio. People rose from their seats, clapping and cheering, moved not just by Elon's vision for the future, but by the humility and passion behind his words. It was a moment of unity, of shared purpose, that transcended the usual back and forth of a talk show interview. Elon, ever modest, simply smiled and nodded in appreciation. He didn't revel in the applause or bask in the spotlight. He had said what needed to be said, and that was enough. As the applause continued, the host, still seated in his chair, realized that he had lost not just the interview, but the entire room. He had tried to bring Elon down, but instead, Elon had risen above it all, leaving the audience inspired and speechless. The camera zoomed in on Elon as the applause finally began to die down. The host, visibly flustered, shuffled his notes, searching for a way to end the segment gracefully. He had come into the interview with a plan, but now all of that had crumbled away. All he could do was acknowledge the moment for what it was. "Well," the host said, his voice strained but polite, "I think we've all learned a lot today. Elon Musk, everyone." The audience erupted into applause once again, and Elon gave a small, humble wave before standing up to shake the host's hand. There was no animosity between them, just a quiet understanding that something bigger had happened here tonight. The host might not have achieved his original goal, but the conversation had become something far more meaningful than anyone had expected. As Elon walked off the stage, the audience still cheering, the host remained seated, staring out into the crowd. He had been bested, yes, but more than that, he had been given a glimpse into a world that was bigger than the petty arguments of a talk show. For a brief moment, even he felt the weight of Elon's vision, the enormity of what was at stake. The cameras panned across the audience, capturing the looks of awe and admiration on their faces. And as the credits began to roll, it was clear that this was more than just another episode of a talk show. It was a moment of inspiration that would stay with the audience and the viewers at home for a long time. Elon Musk had done what he always did. He had challenged people to think bigger, to see beyond the present, and to believe in the possibility of a better future. And in doing so, he had left the world speechless.